مساء الخير، ازيكم؟ معاكم شريف بكر العربي للنشر والتوزيع. برحب بيكم في لقاءاتنا مع كتابنا من حول العالم، ولقائنا النهارده مع كاتبنا السويسري يوناس لوشر. يوناس احنا نشرنا له عملين لحد دلوقتي، اللي هو كتبهم الحقيقه. العمل الاول 12 سنه 2016 وهو ربيع البربر، وده اللي هنتكلم عليه النهارده اكتر. عمله الثاني هو كرافت، ال 12 بعده وخد عليه جائزة أحسن كتاب سويسري. ربيع البربر خد جوائز كتير وترشح لجوائز كتير، وهو كتاب يعني ممكن نقول إن هو من عنوانه يبان إن هو مستفز قوي وله قصة وله حكاية. هنحاول نتكلم فيها مع يوناس دلوقتي، وهنبتدي من أول علاقة يوناس بالوطن العربي أو بالعالم العربي، لأن الكتاب الأول ده أحداثه بتحصل في تونس، وهو عليه ملكة إنجلترا. فإيه العلاقات دي كلها؟ هنحاول نكسبلور ده دلوقتي مع بعض. هنتكلم بالإنجليزي وهتطلع لكم السبتايتلز تحت بالعربي. Hi Jonas, how are you?
Hi, Sharif. I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, and we hope you're good and things are good in Germany, where you're staying, not Switzerland. But
they are, more or less.
Yeah, I hope. I think with the hot weather, things will be better. Hopefully, with the summer, you will have some summer.
I hope so, but we had a really ugly spring till now. A lot of rain. I missed the Cairo weather.
Not really. It's really, really hot now. It's like 37 or something, and we have the AC on, and we start like 6 months of this now. So, but it's nice.
I think like it. I would enjoy it. We have about 12 degrees here and stuff like this.
No, that's really cold.
Yes.
We'll start talking about Frühling the Barbaren, as if I'm pronouncing it right, or Spring of the Barbaren. And I was saying that this book is really provocative from the title even. It provoked a lot of people, especially in this side of the world, because it came 2016 in Arabic, and before that in German. So it was kind of, people would think you're talking about the Arab Spring, that the Arabs are the barbarians. Can you explain a little bit, especially that it's happening in Tunisia, where the Arab Spring starts? So you might be meaning something. Could you tell us about this?
It actually takes place in the situation of the Arab Spring. But the barbarians, to get the elephant out of the room, are not the Arab people, the Tunisian people in the book. It's more a group of European people, mostly British young bankers from the London city, who behave very barbaric in this book. The book was written, I started writing it, I think about 2009, when the financial crisis was on its peak. And it was published in German in 2013 or 2012. Not sure anymore. Something around there.
Wow, that sounds too old now. Almost 9 years.
Yeah, wow. It's almost a decade now. Yeah, it's
wow.
But it's somehow astonishingly in Germany, the book kind of kept being something like a long seller, because many schools are reading it. It's very often used as a book for the final exams in high school.
Really? That's nice that they read the. We lack this. We don't even have Naguib Mahfouz in schools. So in order to read something contemporary like this for young readers, and it's a controversial also because it's really criticizing the West. But let me ask you first, why British bankers? Why not Swiss bankers? I mean, you come from Switzerland, and Switzerland are known for banking, and it's not the best thing in terms of, I mean, idealistically, it sounds good, but there is always something about banks that you don't trust. Or you didn't want to target the Swiss image.
The thing is, there are different points, but one of it would be that I'm talking about a special kind of banking, and I'm talking about investment bankers. And the center of the investment banking world was New York, or still is New York, and was then, especially then, London. So there were many Swiss banks like the UBS and Credit Suisse and all those big Swiss banks who had their investment banking run out of London mostly. So I'm talking more about like a really international group of people working there. And the problem is that Switzerland or Swiss people do play a totally different role in this book, because the main character, Mr. Preising, who is a rich heir of a telecommunication company, he is kind of a typical or almost stereotypical Swiss guy who never decides anything and who keeps himself outside of everything. He's just always just watching people, but never really acting in everything which happens. So this is more the Swiss role I wanted to take Swiss people in the book. And it was just in this time, or it would be probably even today, most realistic that a group of young investment bankers would be from the Londoner city.
As you were saying, you were talking about how the Swiss character is represented in the book by Preising, Mr. Preising. And don't you think that this is kind of a bit, this is what you think Swiss people are? They are kind of a passive people towards things, or they don't take action, or they just watch, or how do you see this? Because you have a very critical point of the Swiss.
I wouldn't say it's that I describe single Swiss people like this. It's more, Preising is more like a stereotype for the whole Swiss politics from the last, from all the Swiss times, because we in Switzerland, we tend to stay outside of world politics. We try to be neutral. We don't want to get involved too much. I don't know if you have heard of it in Egypt that last week. We stopped negotiating our relationship with the European Union. We had 8 years of negotiation, new contracts, which should define our relationship, and the Swiss government just pulled out of the negotiations and dismissed this contract. And that's kind of typical. We want to be part of the world. We want to do business with the world, but we don't hands third, or we don't want to get too much involved. It's always like we're like to stay on our own. It's a kind of a isolating politics, which I frankly don't like about Switzerland, because I think we are very much involved in an economical sense. So we should also take more responsibility than we do.
I think Switzerland never had a war, kind of. I mean, a real war.
It's quite a long time ago if we had, but we didn't have any wars in the 20th century. We haven't been very much involved in the First and Second World War. So, or officially we haven't been involved, but we made a lot of business with all the different sides during the war. But yes, never
had a war.
Yes.
But on the other side, I mean, Switzerland is very known for chocolate, is very known for watches and for banks. Do you find there is any correlation, any relation between these three? I mean, why chocolate and banks and watches? I mean,
no, I don't think so. That's just more of a coincidence. I think the banks have nothing to do with the watches or the chocolate. But interestingly, in this discussion is that what Switzerland was famous before that was for soldiers. Swiss soldiers were on all the battlefields in Europe for centuries. And we have been fighting for every king in Europe and on all the battlefields. So
and
we have been very much involved into the wars.
Yeah.
The Swiss mercenaries were our main export goods for a long time.
Wow, okay. So back to the novel. In the novel, it starts by Mr. Pricing, who's going to Tunisia to check a factory or some business there. And he meets the owner, and things starts to go to a resort in the desert where he meets all these bankers there. There was a certain scene, I think you remember, we had to discuss when we were translating, and then after that when it was released, of the man with his relation with the Tunisian, and if this is a condescending way of showing the Tunisian, and you said that you count on how smart the reader is on this point. Do you remember this? Would you like to elaborate?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Would you like to elaborate? Because it was a big misunderstanding, and I remember we had our own discussion as an editor and an author, and then you said we'll depend on the readers, and then when the readers came, you were a bit shocked, if I recall, especially when there is like with an award-winning author who didn't read it right or who read it his own way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very ironic book. It's kind of a funny, ironic book in many ways. And I do work a lot with cliches of British bankers, with the cliches of Swiss businessmen, but also a lot with cliches of Orientalism, which takes special part in the book because the book plays in this, most of it takes part in this oasis resort, a very luxurious hotel resort in the Tunisian desert. And the main part of the book is kind of a clash of culture from, you have those rich British bankers on the one hand, and you have this very rich Tunisian family who owns the resort and who is business companions of Pricing. And on the other hand, you have all those Tunisian people working in this resort as, you know, waiters and pool boys and all this stuff. So what I was interested in was the clash between a very rich European society and the people from more of a developing country like Tunisia, who has to serve them, which is kind of a new form of colonialism. It reflects the same kind of, in a different way, it reflects the same kind of clash of culture. So I work with a lot of cliches and pictures from Orientalism, of colonialism, but it's meant very ironic. So I make fun about how colonialistic or how much in working with Orientalistic pictures the modern tourism branches or tourism industry is doing. That's what I was interested in, and it's meant very more sarcastic or ironic. This one scene where Pricing meets a Tunisian businessman, and Pricing tells later a friend that he was offering him his girls to marry and stuff like this, which is all those old cliches. But Pricing is always, you can't trust Pricing in this book. He's a guy who tells stories like from 1001 Night, you know, because he likes
that's
this.
How it felt the theme. It's like based on a European vision of 1001 Nights, what they see or perceive. So
I remember this one writer, he came to me and said no Tunisian businessman would offer his daughters to a Swiss businessman. And I was like, yeah, of course not. I know that I'm making fun of the idea. Yeah.
No, and that's literature. I mean, you can make whatever, but it's not taken like in a personal way, like he did, or like others,
Yeah.
I'm sure also would do. But I mean, that's literature. That's how people would talk differently and try to.
Yeah, and I think in a younger generation, it was totally clear how I meant it, because this is this like postmodern approach to literature and art, where you know that irony is always there and there are 7 different levels of meaning and stuff like this. So for a younger readership, when I was talking to students in Egypt about the book, or also in Tunisia, there were never this kind of misunderstanding.
I think, yeah, it showed a little bit, but yeah, sometimes people need to think a little bit different or outside the box.
Yeah.
Which brings me also to the point that you wrote about Tunisia, and you've never been there before writing. I mean,
Right.
you went after the book was released, which was really nice to discuss the book there. But you chose Tunisia, which is a country you haven't been to, and
Yeah.
you wrote a book that's all happening in Tunisia where you've never been. And I remember there was also a story about finding the price of a camel. How much is a camel cost in Tunisia? So quickly, could you tell us why and how?
Well, I was interested, as I told you, about the situation, the clash of rich tourists with people from a country who have to serve them. So the book could have taken place also in, I don't know, the Caribbean, on a Caribbean island, or in Thailand or something like this. But I had a feeling that this North African setting in the desert would be very well suiting the book, all in all, because all of the historic things which happened, which I sometimes bring into the book, and all of this with the special history of Tunisia. And on the other hand, the book isn't really playing in a real Tunisia, because it takes place in this oasis resort. And this oasis resort is a very, very artificial place. It was designed by a German, or it was designed by a German well-known resort designer. So it's her idea how Tunisia should look. And she works with all those cliches. So it's like a Disneyland version of Tunisia. It's not real Tunisia. Mm-hmm. And that was the reason why I didn't have the feeling I have to go there, because I wasn't writing a book about Tunisia. I was writing a book about how a German resort designer would think about Tunisia. So it would have even been probably like not a good idea to travel there and to see the real Tunisia before I write the book, because I wanted to be a total brainchild and just something out of imagination. So if a Tunisian...
And the price of the camel, how did you get it?
Yes.
I wouldn't know how much a camel costs.
I wanted to get the facts right, yes. And it's hard to find out what a camel costs in Tunisia, but then I found there is in Switzerland, near Zurich, there is a camel breeder, a Tunisian camel breeder in Switzerland. And I wrote him an email if he knows what the price of a camel would be. And he said, yes, he's going to call his cousin or write his cousin who works as a camel breeder in Tunisia, and he will give him the answer.
So you wanted to get the facts straight as well. So you would have
yes, of course. I wanted to get the facts straight, but it was still... Yeah. So if a Tunisian reader would tell me that this is not really a book about Tunisia, that you didn't got Tunisia right, it's just a too much European vision of Tunisia, I would say, that's exactly what I wanted to.
That's what you wanted. That's what you wanted to highlight, that, yeah, there is this European way of looking at things that you are trying to criticize. Which brings me to the point, if you remember, when we were at the book fair, I think 2016, when the book was released, you came to Cairo, and we launched before in We launched actually the second edition during the book fair. The first was launched in October when the book was released, and you were here as well. And then we released again during the book fair with the presence of the Swiss ambassador, who kindly came to attend, and we were talking, and people who were sitting were very much astonished that you're criticizing the Swiss people in front of the ambassador, and getting a prize by the Swiss people for criticizing them in a book that's being widely translated internationally, so that you are spreading what we call a bad image about Swiss people. And not only this, but they are kind of supporting you. I remember what the Swiss ambassador said, but I would like you to give us a take on this, because it's also mentioned a lot here. If someone is saying something about bad or presenting a bad character, even in a, you know, we had lawsuits here. If you have a lawyer, a bad lawyer in a movie, that means that you're insulting all lawyers, and they don't take it like that case, even if it's like a minor case or anything, that you have the right to do this. So could you elaborate a little bit on this?
Well, I think in Switzerland and as well as in Germany, I would say it counts for all the European countries. The idea is that the arts, movie makers, especially theater makers, writers, all the arts have their duty is to criticize politics and government and the society, and to, you know, to show them their mirror and to point to problematic parts of our society or of politics. And this is kind of something which goes pretty far through the whole political spectrum. Maybe not on the very right side, but even conservatives and of course all the liberals and lefts would say it is the duty of artists to criticize politics, and even politics would still they agree to that, and they say we need that. That's kind of an agreement we have in society, and the state is even financing and funding very critical books. So you can, like, especially the theater scene in Germany is extremely critical against politics and everything, but they are completely, the whole theaters are financed by the state. It's like our duty to do that.
That's what the ambassador exactly said. He said that he thanked you actually for pointing out these things, and that's your role as an artist. Yes. Or if you criticize and they try to work around it, which was not the case in America, for instance, in the past. You know, the last president was also not very fond of criticism, and that that was also strange to have this.
And in the US, there is practically no. Sorry, again?
Yeah, no, you were saying no. Sorry.
Like in the US, there is also practically no public funding of the arts. It's more like a European thing to publicly fund the arts.
That actually makes it also a bit more stable or more strange that, you know, you criticize me and I give you money and I give you a prize, and that was what people really didn't get. I mean, but it seems that this is very healthy also for the system to be able to.
It is. I think a working democracy needs that, actually. I think it's part of a working democracy that you have a lively, active art scene criticizing the government, criticizing politics, criticizing certain things in society. Because, I mean, we have a relatively well-working society and democracy in Germany or in Switzerland, but still there are so many problems and things not turning out the right way. So there is always space and a need for criticism, especially when you think about the German history. I think it was mostly because of German arts that we in Germany have this very open relationship with our darkest past, that we are always aware about what we did to the world in the last century, and that we have a special responsibility because of this, and that there is something like a guilt
feeling. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
it's a kind of a guilt we inherit.
It's very obvious
Sorry?
in the writing. It's very obvious in the writing and
Yes.
the movies and everything. There is this guilt feeling, and there is the price that you have to pay. And maybe in what you're saying, that if there was enough criticism at that time, maybe this wouldn't have happened. So this is why they have to accept this kind of.
Yeah, it was
correctly?
actually a lot of German arts in the 50s was quite different. There was a lot of movies who were just happy about family life and about normal life and not about problems. And they try to forget everything which happened. And then a lot of writers came up and filmmakers and said, no, we have this past, we have to write books about the German role in the Second World War. We have to do films about the Holocaust, all this stuff, and we have to keep the memory alive. It's a vital thing for our society that there is arts who keep the memory alive.
Which brings me also to the point that you are a Swiss person or Swiss citizen who is living in Germany, not in Switzerland. And I remember also saying in the same session, which was also very much criticized by the people, that you said that you see Switzerland as a big, clean prison. That's why you live in Germany. And that, I mean,
well,
it's a bit of an exaggeration, of course, but the idea is that was like everybody said, we want to go to prison then, if this is what your version of prison. So could you elaborate also on how you perceive this? Because this sounds very strange and, you know.
Well, it's actually, I was quoting Dürrenmatt, who was talking about this in a
play.
Do I remember? No, I think it was in a speech when he was honoring Václav Havel.
Okay.
I think so. I'm not totally sure now, but I think so. And it's more about the idea that we can be in a kind of a rigid society, that we can build our own prison, and we are all our own prison guards, or we are the prison guards of our neighbors, and watching everybody, what is he doing, are we all living the right life, and having this kind of a rigid society. Mm-hmm. It is an interesting quote, but on the other hand, you also have to see that we are indeed a very free society, and nobody is traveling as much as the Swiss people are. They have a lot of money, and with the Swiss passport you can go everywhere. So it can sound also somehow cynic, because when you think about, I don't know, I have a lot of friends in Belarus in now who live in Minsk, writers and translators, and they are much more in a prison than Swiss people.
But why Germany? Why left Switzerland and not in Zurich, not in, I don't know.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, the simple answer is because of love. I felt in love.
Okay.
German
That's
girl,
a killer, yes.
my wife today.
Actually,
so
we have a saying in Arabic that says, where is your city or where is your country? It's where my wife is. That's in Arabic. Exactly. So you're a real example of this. So you fell in love in Germany, so you had to move. Okay, that's good. That's a very, very good reason.
It's a good reason. Now I do live in Germany since I think 21 years, and I have become a German citizen a couple of years ago, which was kind of important for me because I want to be
vote.
able to vote. Yeah,
of course.
It's,
You want to have your contribution to the society also.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll be a politician soon. Who knows? See you in the
Me?
parliament or something.
I don't think so. That would be hard for me.
Well, you never know. Never say never. So let's hope and see. Let's wait and see. One last question about the book, the ending of the book, which is a very tragic ending, and there was, a lot of killing, or people turned into being barbarians and acted barbarians. I remember also in your saying there was of all the scenes that happened and there was a little bit of blood or violence. All students, I think you said it's like the questions that all schools ask is about a dog at the end of the book, not about the people, it's about what happened to the dog. And that scene was like very much criticized in a way, which reminds me also with our author from the Ukraine who wrote Death and the Penguins. And with German students, especially, he said that they kept not talking about the whole book, but just talking about that at the end of the book, the protagonist left the penguin and traveled, and what happened to the penguin. And I think it reached that he wrote a whole book about the penguin just for the German people. It was just like translated to German. Nobody else translated it because the rest of the world, that was like the end of the story. There's no need to do this. But German people were very worried about the penguin and the dog. So could you also tell us why do you think this?
Well, it's always, as a reader, I often have the same feelings that when there is cruelty against animals in books or even in movies, it's always something which touches me very strongly too, because animals are often also in my book something like a picture for the innocent creature, for the innocent. So it has a special cruelty to be cruel to the innocent creature, and it's something very.
There were people also suffering at the end.
Yes.
They didn't care for people as much as the dog and what happened to the dog. So
it is interesting because we always tend to say, the people, they are kind of involved. They're never completely innocent. Everybody who suffers in a book, mostly as people, are kind of involved in stories and not totally innocent. But it's different for animals, and it's different for children, of course, for kids, where you would say that's the innocent too. And both of it, kids and children and animals, are kind of a very strong picture in narratives to talk about the suffering of the innocent.
Okay, makes more sense there. Jonas, it's very nice to talk to you. It reminds me with your time here in Cairo, which we spent some lovely time in the streets of Cairo downtown during many years, several times, and I think there will be more times to come, and we can go like this forever. We had days and nights talking like this, and I really missed this time. And I think we'll talk more about Cairo and about you in Cairo and about Corona and COVID-19 and what it did, but maybe in our next video about craft. So thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
We still love the book. It's years, but it's still, and I think also in the past years, there were a lot of scenes in the book that were, they were fiction, but they were then in real life. So it was kind of predicting what would happen. Like, you've seen things happening around the world like crazy. I read this, I've seen this. And that's the beauty of literature. I think it just gives you maybe a wide image of what's happening more. So thank you very much, and see you in the next video again.
See you very soon.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it. Bye, thanks.
Bye.